Hi, and welcome to episode 18 of Stuttering, Demystified, and Beyond. You might have noticed that I added Beyond to the podcast name, as I would like to talk about issues about stuttering and other speech and language, communication, and learning issues as well. I am your host, Lori Melnitsky, speech language pathologist, stuttering specialist, and ADHD life coach as well. In this episode, I would like to talk to you about, can we talk to people about stuttering? Is the word stuttering a bad word? And this was brought on by a really wise speech pathologist who had asked about this, and I'm so glad she did because it's an important topic. So I have heard over the years people talk about stuttered speech as smooth and bumpy speech. To be honest with you, bumpy is not a word that I've ever really used much because I never understood what bumpy speech meant. Stuttered speech is not bumpy speech. Stuttered speech is a disruption in the normal flow of fluency. Many times I get calls from parents, and I totally understand it. Do you think I should tell my kids they stutter? They didn't bring it up to me. Do you think I should use the word stuttering? Stuttering is just a word. All of our words are just words. They're symbols for meanings and communication. So they only become negative if we make them negative. So most of the times kids know that they stutter, and sometimes it's a relief to have a name, and there's nothing negative about it. It's why I name my podcast Stuttering Demystified. It's probably why it's a little bit hard of a word for me to say, because it's an emotionally charged word. And to be honest, when I was growing up, the word stuttering wasn't used a lot. The word bumpy, to be honest, was not used a lot. The only time I ever heard the word bumpy is if I was in a car and I was going over a rock in the road. So it always kind of confused me, especially as I got into grad school, where smooth and bumpy came from. And I always heard things like people would or there was fast versus slow speech, like a turtle was very fast and a rabbit hopped, and he was slow and very bumpy, but it never resonated with me. And when I taught in grad school, a course on stuttering several years ago, which was a great opportunity, I worked with some really wonderful, inspiring, and aspiring speech pathologists who are actually speech pathologists now. And then when I worked at LIU, we did a whole project on this, and it was such a great learning experience because it did kind of bring out, if you're doing a practice session with someone with the word bumpy, I can actually spend longer explaining what that means, and they look a little confused, and the parents are walking around telling people that their child has bumpy speech. It's stuttered speech. In other parts of the country, in my world rather, it might be called stammering. But if we take a concept and we're ashamed of it and we're afraid to mention it, it's going to become only negative to us. If we're a parent, it's going to become only negative to children we work with. And I'm going to give you an example. This is actually an ADHD example because I notice this happens a lot also. I see a lot of students going through, especially high school, they get accommodations, they get extra time, they know that they're having some issues learning, but they don't know that they have ADHD. And a young woman who I work with actually is now in college, and she's actually reading now about ADHD, and she actually understands what it means. And she's like, I don't understand this. Why didn't anybody in high school say to me, you have ADHD, these are some of the things you have to work on. There's nothing wrong with you. You will be okay. And it's the same with stuttering. The fear of using the word stuttering becomes, one, as parents, we're afraid that our kids are not going to be all right, and I totally understand that. Number two, I think speech language pathologists and professionals, because we can't always stop stuttering, and as people get older, there's no obvious cure, or there is no cure, ways to manage it. So there's a fear of that, like we can't fix the person we're working with, and maybe if we can make it more fun and interesting, it's going to make the situation better. And number three, there's just lack of understanding in general what stuttering is. And again, I've said the word stuttering probably more in this podcast episode than I've said it in a whole week, but I'm doing it for a few reasons. One, it desensitizes me because it's an emotionally charged word for me. And I want you to really understand it's just a word. Stuttering, stammering, ADHD, oral motor dysfunction. Sometimes we make things more complicated than it is, and the people we're working with don't understand it. Speaking in itself is challenging enough. So if we make it more complicated, then they're not going to understand what it means. If a tennis player goes out to play tennis and they fall and they break their leg, they're a tennis player who broke their leg. If we start to change it into some kind of medical term or another term, then we're going to have to explain what that means. So it's very, very important, that we start to use words and realize that words are just symbols. And our job as parents, our job as speech language pathologists are to try and make these things as positive as we can. That doesn't mean we have to speak about it all day. That doesn't mean it has to be the topic of conversation. It just means it's a word. So thank you for listening. If you're a speech language pathologist, my preschool stuttering course, Unravel the Mystery, will be out until the middle of May. Please join Stuttering Demystified on Facebook. I will post the links below. School-age stuttering is available also. So I hope this information helps you. If you need to reach me, my email is Lori, Lori, at allispeech.com. Thank you so much.